obligations, but we will be very interested in hearing what you have to say, and as long as you need to take to say it.
Well, Madam Chairman, thank you very, very much. Thanks for the privilege of appearing before this committee, Senator Inhofe, and all the members of the committee, many of whom I've met with individually talking about this, excuse me, and all of whom I really want to sit down with and talk about this, because we need to find the path forward. I listened carefully, Senator Inhofe, to your comments, and I will address some of them as I go along, and I'd like to. But I want to thank Chairman Boxer, first of all, for her passionate, determined, inspirational leadership on this issue. She has been a gracious and invaluable collaborator in this effort, and I am personally grateful to her, as are many people, for her effort to push this along. You may disagree with her, but she is determined to try to put America in the right place on this issue. And I hope in the course of these hearings we'll all understand how we're doing that. Today we begin the formal legislative process to lead the world in rolling back the urgent threat of climate change. I believe, and the vast majority, overwhelming numbers of scientists in peer-reviewed studies across the globe, leaders of countries across the globe, presidents, prime ministers, finance ministers, environment ministers, all across the planet, have all determined that we need to move forward to deal with climate change, and that in doing so, Senator Inhofe, we will actually improve every sector of our energy economy, from coal to nuclear to wind and solar. We will take crucial strides towards energy independence, which strengthens America's national security, and critically, we will create millions of jobs, new jobs, and entire new industries will stay in the United States of America. We will create jobs that cannot be exported, because we will create our energy here at home, which makes America stronger and which, in fact, strengthens our competitive posture. It's no surprise that somebody like Jim Rogers, who runs a multi-billion-dollar company, a CEO, Fortune 500 company, Duke Energy, is one of the leaders. He's the chairman of America's Competitiveness Council. He's responsible in that capacity for creating jobs and for making America more competitive. And he is one of the leaders in saying that we need to set a fixed target of pollution reduction in order to challenge our economy and in order to grow our economy for the future and remain competitive. Now, we're not going to do these things if we don't pass an aggressive, forward-looking climate and energy combined piece of legislation. Now, let me share with you very quickly. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I do want to share with you why there's an urgency to this. Senator Inhofe, you just talked about the costs of doing some of this. Are there some costs? Yes, sir. There are some costs. But almost every study that looks at the costs does not factor in the impact of energy efficiency or the impact of new technology or what the impact is of becoming more energy independent. And most importantly, none of them factor in the cost of doing nothing. That's far more expensive for your folks in Oklahoma or for your folks in any of the other states represented on this panel. So we need to be honest and realistic as we assess how we, in fact, best protect the interests of our country. There's a reason that the leaders of the G20 in Italy recently affirmed that we cannot let the temperature of the planet rise more than 2 degrees centigrade. And the reason is that all of our best scientists in peer-reviewed studies tell us that if it goes over 2 degrees centigrade, we risk catastrophic changes to the climate, to our crops, to our water supply, to the ocean currents, to the ecosystems that we depend on. And I will say to you, the science, senators, is more definitive than ever. The science is screaming at us to take action. A few years ago, the scientists told us that the Arctic ice would be melted perhaps by 2030. It is now going to be summer ice-free by 2013. And already Russia has gone ahead and planted a flag underneath the ocean to say we have the right to take these minerals out of here because they have an ability, because it's ice-free, to be able to go up there and do that. There are huge conflicts that will come out of what we are allowing to happen without addressing it adequately. In the 21 years that we've had hearings on this in the Senate, Al Gore and I shared the privilege of having the first hearings on this in 1988, when Jim Hansen first told us that it was happening. And the evidence is now clearer than ever before that a voluntary approach just doesn't work. We went down to Rio with President George Herbert Walker Bush, a Republican administration, with the efforts of John Sununu and Bill Riley, put in place a voluntary framework for a global effort to reduce emissions because in 1992 we determined that we needed to do this. What happened? In every country in the world, emissions have gone up faster than is allowable to meet the 2 degrees centigrade standard. And it's because voluntary doesn't work. Everybody's waiting for the next person to move. Nobody wants to sort of curb in their economy, as you have said, Senator Inhofe, because they're afraid they'll be non-competitive. But the consequences of that are really traumatic. The best experts tell us that the last 10 years have been the hottest decade on record since we've kept records of temperature. Our oceans have become 30% more acidic, and that has a profound impact on the spawning grounds and on the krill that feed the whales and on the cycle of the oceans. Pine beetles have destroyed 6.5 million acres of forest land in the western states. I recently listened to Governor Ritter from Colorado come in and tell us how in Colorado alone they've lost 1 million acres because beetles that used to die off because it got cold now don't die off, and so the cycle has changed. 180 Alaskan villages are losing permafrost, literally melting the ground beneath their homes and feet. The citizens of Newtok, Alaska, ask Lisa Murkowski, ask Mark Begich. They'll tell you what's happening in Alaska. The citizens of Newtok, Alaska recently voted to move their village inland because of the rise of sea level and the lack of sea ice in the winter, and that's at a cost of some $400 million. The fact is that there's enormous melt-off of our glaciers in the western part of our country. Water supply is already at issue. The principal supply to American agriculture is at issue. And the rivers around the world are at issue. The Chinese have taken enormous note of this. I was in China 2 months ago. They are fearful that the great rivers of China, the Yangtze, the Yellow River, are going to dry up, the Mekong, and that affects 1 billion people and the agriculture of their nation. Southwestern states in our country are projected now to experience permanent drought conditions by mid-century. And the area that's burned by western wildfires is projected to nearly triple. The fact is that the Siberian ice shelf study, which just came out this last year, shows that because the permafrost lid is melting, because the oceans are getting warmer, we have columns of methane rising now in the ocean. And if you were to stand at the place where those bubbles of methane actually burst out into the open air and light a match, it would ignite. Methane is 20 times more dangerous and damaging than carbon dioxide, than CO2. So we have an enormous challenge facing us in order to be able to do this. And all of the scientists who in these peer-reviewed studies are telling us that these changes may well be irreversible for 1,000 years. You know, an organization as innocent as the Audubon Society has reported that there is now a 100-mile swath of wide belt in the United States where there is a transformation in what plants and flowers and bushes and shrubs and so forth will grow in America. There's already a migration that has been predicted by many scientists. So that is why, Madam Chairman, the countries of the world, and there are many other impacts. I'm not going to go into all of them here now, but that's why the countries of the world, including India, China, and the United States, have agreed to limit this global rise to 2 degrees Celsius. Now, why is that so critical? because the current warming level of Earth, scientists tell us, is already at about 0.8 degrees since the Industrial Revolution. And what is already up there in the atmosphere, which we can't get out, has a half-life, that is, it will continue to do the damage it's doing today for another 1,000 years, perhaps. That means that what we've put up there that has done the damage, that has raised the temperature to 0.8 degrees, is guaranteed to raise it at least another 0.8 degrees. That means we're going to be at almost certainly 1.6 degrees centigrade before we even do anything, Madam Chairman. And that gives us a cushion of about 0.4 degrees before you reach the 2 degrees, which they say could result in catastrophe. Now, I can't tell you that it absolutely is. I can't sit here and tell you with certainty that I know the answer to that. But I can tell you as a public person that if the best scientific minds we have in the world in peer-reviewed studies are all in unity telling us this is the potential consequence, I think as public people we have a responsibility to try to respond. And if we're wrong, you know, we will have created new jobs, become more energy independent, move to the point of having better health in America, and increased the security of the United States. If we're right and someone else is wrong and we haven't done anything, the results are obviously absolutely catastrophic. That's the balance here. Now, I believe there's a workable mechanism to get this done, Madam Chairman. And if you look at our legislation, we ask America to do our part, and we have to work, obviously, to convince others to do theirs. Let me make it clear that by putting this target in place, I believe we will attract private investment and spur a new industrial revolution in America. We had the great movement of wealth, if you will, in the 1990s when we moved to the tech economy. That's an economy that was about $1 trillion large, and it had about 1 billion users. What we're looking at now is an economy where most estimates say it is a $6 trillion economy with 6 billion users. Energy economy is the mother of all economies. And right now, the United States of America is watching China, watching Germany, watching India, and other countries race to this marketplace at the expense of the jobs of our nation. I believe that the pollution reduction measures that are in this bill are very tightly focused for maximum impact. And I want to emphasize that, that some people argue the effect on the economy. Senator Inhofe, you've raised this, U.S. unemployment, et cetera, why kill more jobs? I have a report here. It's a compilation of reports, different reports by the Center for American Progress, by the U.S. Conference of Mayors, by the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy, by the College of Natural Resources at the University of California, Berkeley. Every single one of these analyses, we've done them for each of your states, for every one of you on this committee, and we'll do them for everybody in the Senate. They show net creation of jobs in every one of your states. They show net increase of investment and money moving into your states. In Idaho, for instance, 7,000 to 14,000 jobs net, according to the University of Berkeley. According to the American Council for Energy, by 2020, 2,200 jobs created from energy-efficient measures, a savings of $226. By 2030, 2,900 jobs created, $700 million. According to the Center for American Progress, $700 million will come into Idaho alone, creating 8,000 jobs. There's a variation here. But there isn't one of these that doesn't suggest an increase of jobs, an increase of investment. We're going to create the equivalent of 5 or 10 Google equivalents that are going to drive the economy of our country. And that's why people like DuPont, Dow Chemical, Florida Power Light, American Power, the Florida Power Light, Duke Energy, Cisco Systems, some of the largest companies in America are all saying, do this. Give us a market certainty on the price of carbon.